All right, now, book 2, chapter 3. So it's obvious that Dr. Dillamond was murdered, but the story that Madame Morrible and everyone's passing around is that he stumbled and sliced his neck on a broken magnifying glass. Alma Clutch still can't tell anyone anything. She's completely out of it. And Madame Morrible threatens to send Glinda and Elphaba to the common dorm rather than their private room. But Elphaba says, well, let me send for Nanny, because she can be our Amma. Bach meets Nanny and Nessa Rose at the station, and she takes over Alma Clutch's room. Now, Nessa Rose, if you remember, is Elphaba's younger sister. I did not know this part, or I didn't remember this part. Nessa Rose, it talked about, I knew she was disabled in some way, but it talks about her getting out of the wagon or whatever, and she can barely walk. Her legs are kind of deformed. She has a wheelchair, but she is also armless. So I didn't remember that. So that was a little shocking. Okay, so now that Dr. Dillamond has died and Alma Clutch is out of it, Glinda is not as flighty as she used to be. She's getting a lot more serious, and she gets a lot closer to Elphaba. She asks about Nessa Rose and Elphaba's family. Elphaba tells her that during Nessa Rose's birth, this happened during the Munchkinland drought and Turtleheart being killed by a mob. The family moved to Quadling Country to do missionary work, and then Milena dies giving birth, but not to Nessa Rose, to Elphaba's brother, Shell. Elphaba witnesses the wizard's men kill Quadlings and, take all the rubies like we knew they were going to do from the beginning. Elphaba says that Nessa Rose is very pious and strong-willed. Shell, the only thing she mentions about her brother Shell is that he is male, white, and whole. She said that Shell would have been their mother's favorite if she had lived, and Nessa Rose is Frex's favorite. So now Bach, after everybody's kind of chilled about Dr. Dillamond's murder, Bach asks what happens with the research that he did. Elphaba has them, but she's not going to share them. And she's like, I have a plan. Don't worry about it. You don't need to be involved. There's a replacement for Dr. Dillamond, Dr. Nicodic. A new student arrives late to class during the new teacher's demonstration of something, extract of biological intention. The vapor from that extract brings a set of antlers to life, and they attack the new student. The new student is Fiyero, and it mentioned that he had blue tattoos all over his body. In that same class a few days later, that same teacher has a lion cub and took it away from its mother and is kind of torturing it to show that there is a difference between capital animals and animals. They all disrupt the lesson, take the cub, and run away. Were you surprised who the killer was? Okay, after the funeral, Madame Morrible takes Glinda, Elphaba, and Nessa Rose. She wants to know what Alma Clutch may have said about Dr. Dillamond. And Madame Morrible says, oh, I just sent Grammatic over that morning with tea for the professor. And Alma Clutch must have just arrived when Grammatic found the body. Glinda doesn't reveal anything that Madame Morrible doesn't already know, which was that Alma Clutch went to the lab before the body was discovered. And then she does confess that she made up Alma Clutch's disease. So that's given her some information. She says Glinda's confession is proof of her magical power, trying to say that she is the one that made Alma Clutch sick. She binds the three of them in a spell that prevents them from remembering or discussing the rest of the conversation with one another. So frustrating. She says, she goes over what the wizard wants to do, like his goals, acknowledging that these three women have power, and she wants them to become adepts, ADEPTS, for the wizard. So she's kind of like saying, hey, I want you all to go to different parts of Oz and be like in charge of those areas for the wizard, do his work. So Glinda would go to the north, Elphaba to the east, Nessarose to the south. Sound like anything you've heard of? All right, so they go to toast Clutch. The group decides to go to the philosophy club. Elphaba insists that she, Glinda, and Nessarose need to go home. And in the cab, she says, hey, Glinda, we're going to the Emerald City. We're going to confront the wizard right away. We're not going to sit around and wait for this stuff to happen. Okay, the next part is they're at the philosophy club. It's Bach, Averic, Shinshin, Crope, Tibbet, Fiero, Fanny. And I'm not going to go into details because it's inappropriate. But they dance and drink, and there are inappropriate things happening in this club. Okay. Now, Elphaba and Glinda sneak away to go to the Emerald City. And as they're walking to the Emerald City, I feel like they expect it to be more like lively and beautiful and fancy. But what they notice is there's no capital animals around anywhere. It takes them 5 days, and they get an audience with the wizard. And the wizard like has all these special effects, which made me think of the Wizard of Oz movie, like smoke and lights and things like that to make him seem really scary. Elphaba presents Dr. Dilliman's research and says, hey, we need to realize that capital animals are different and they shouldn't have these restrictions that they have right now from the wizard. The wizard just mocks her. He says she's immoral and it's not for her to decide, it's for leaders to decide. After they're done, Elphaba puts Glinda into a carriage back to Shiz, and she's like, hey, I'm not going. See ya. And she's like, I'm disappearing, but I don't know where yet.